Welcome to Old White Merc Gang. We're back to this 1956 Mark 25 20 horse. This is part two of trying to get this thing back together. I honed this the other day, cleaned it up, got the pistons and rods on it. We're to the point where I was trying to slide this thing together, and I don't really necessarily have any tools for doing that. If this was one of the open case ones, where the crank, this would just be like a front cover and the crank actually sits in here kind of separate. That would have been a little different, but sometimes I'll borrow some tools from the local marina. He lets me borrow the tools, so at least to hold the rings on the piston or whatever. And actually I've just used my fingers before to get them together, but this thing was a little different. And one of the things I found, I know at the end of the video I was talking about how I tried different things. I tried a piece of metal, like a piece of thin sheet metal, to try to wrap around there, and that wasn't working too well. So one of the things I found, I'm out of there, when I was doing this, is this has a gasket. Usually you just put some a sealer around your case, but this has a gasket. And what I found is right here where the cylinders are, this was kind of laying over a little bit. Not bad, but at the top of the block of the cylinder, it's at an angle to help you get the piston in there and stuff. And some of this is kind of blocking it. So what I did is I went and grabbed a little utility knife with a new blade, and I just trimmed a little bit off the edge of this, so I could see it a little better. Because what was happening, one of the things that was happening is the rings were they'd be behind the seal and the gasket, and I couldn't really see like how much they were in or out. So what I ended up doing was, once I got used to this, once I took a little break and decided to do it another day, I put some 2-stroke oil in here, okay, and then made sure my rings were where they needed to be, gently slid this over the rings, and just more or less kind of snugged it on there. Made sure that I could move it, even if I had to use my finger or something to try to push it back a little bit, which I ended up not really having to do. But I wanted to make sure that it would move and not be too tight, and then the rings would be in enough so they would slide into the cylinder. So that's what I ended up doing. And as you can probably tell, I got it together. So what I did is I had one piston out all the way, the other one back as far as it would go. I think I did the bottom one first, but I don't know if it really matters. And the bottom one in basically with no problem. The top one, you don't have as much room to work in there. So the clamp had slid back a little bit and the ring popped. I had the first one in, and then the second one popped out. So I had to kind of pull it back apart a little bit, reset the clamp, and I got it in there. I really thought these little cuts and notches or whatever in this hose clamp, and I would probably find something different next time, something similar maybe, and then you got this bump too. So I really thought that was going to cause a problem, but to be quite honest with you, for doing it this way for my first time, I was actually amazed at how well it went. I think I would have had this together the other day, except for it was just getting late, and I had had enough kind of So what I got to do now, I already have the gasket glued on here. I used my Indian head stuff. I did this the other day, so that's in place. So now I got to squeak it around here. I'm gonna put some on here, and then I'm probably gonna have to turn this thing over to get to the other side, and then we'll put this block together. And then the other thing I did was, and you could probably try to show you after. I'm not sure how well this is gonna show up, but I don't know. Can we see in here all right or what? Yeah, you can kind of see in there. So these are our intake ports, and I did have this together more so that the piston rings were showing. And what I did is I just, carefully took a small screwdriver and just pushed on each ring to make sure that it would move. You could push it in and it would bounce back out, which tells me that all our rings are good. We didn't break a ring putting it together, so that worked out pretty good. So that's where I'm at. I'm gonna put some sealer on here, and I'm gonna get this block back together. I got the hood's sitting over here. That's so in case someone doesn't know what this motor would look like, more or less, that's the cover. I'm sure you've seen some around. There are videos out there. This surface here, I did clean this all up probably a week or so ago. I cleaned this up. There's a O-ring in here. Kind of a weird setup because this copper sits on top of the O-ring, but that O-ring that was in there, man, that thing was hard as a rock. I had a heck of a time getting that out of there, but I cleaned it all up, put a new one in there, so we'll see how that goes. And if you watch the video where there's four, the what do you call it, the thumbnail or whatever, it's got 4 hoods. That'll be one of them, and then there's 3 other ones to the left of this one. And if you did see that video, you saw this part too. And I had this apart right here. Here's this screw here and this little clamp that holds, turn that up, that holds this shifter down. Okay, and what happened was I thought the shifter was frozen. I was playing around with it. I got the lower unit, I finally got that off, and it appeared like on the bottom the shift was working, and the lower unit, the shift worked. It was stuck up here. I couldn't move this handle. And it's kind of funny, if I put this at an angle, you'll see this plate right here. When this thing's in neutral, all right, you can't shift it. Like you put it on start on your throttle, which is right here. Okay, so that's start, and then you can't shift it. It goes into this little notch. It's kind of funny, but anyway, so I'm gonna pull that up. And there's a little ball I showed in the other video. I had this out of the way. I had this out of the way. And there's it's not really it's the top. It's like the top of it is like a ball, and then it's like a stem off of it that goes down in this hole on top of a spring that's under here. And that's what was stuck. So when you go to shift this, that ball is supposed to go down, and that's where it was stuck. So you'll see now. I don't know if you heard it click, but so that'd be forward, neutral, and there's reverse, and you can actually see the little hole right there that ball's going up against. There, you probably heard it click that time. So there's your neutral. So I had found one on a website, but as it turned out, there was 2 of them. So I was going to order it, and a couple of days went by, and I went to order it, and it was gone. So That was my luck. So I went to the local hardware store and I got one. I just got a spring, a fairly heavy spring, but something that would fit down in that hole. And then I got a round ball that sits on top of the spring but goes down in the hole, and looks like it's gonna work. So anyway, so I'm gonna get the sealer on here. I'll start getting this back together, and then we're gonna move on to probably putting these port covers on. And I'll probably, seeing as it looks like it shows, probably try to show the rings with the screwdriver. I'll show how I did that. Alright, so let's work on that. Alright guys, so this is where we're at. Blocks back together, and I probably should have turned this over the other way, because you know what, I will after. But one thing I noticed, this gasket sticks out past here, and let's see, is that gonna be an issue? No, only on the very just around, just around this one bolt. Doesn't matter in the middle, so I'll trim that up after. Now let's see, I'm gonna take this small screwdriver. I actually set a couple plugs in there while I was turning this over to make sure everything seemed to be okay, and boy, sure seemed like it had a lot of compression. I got a compression tester, so we'll be checking that at some point here. But so you can see the rings down in there, especially the two dark ones here. Those are the new ones, and I put the old one on the back. So you're not gonna be able to see this, but I'm pushing on them. They're definitely all moving. Then I'll bring this one up right there, and we're gonna check this one. Yep, good. All right, those are all moving. That's a sigh of relief, because the only other rings I got are a couple used ones, and I'd hate to have it be uneven. So I'm glad, as much of a pain as that was to get that together, that actually worked out all right with this hose clamp deal. I can't believe it, but I'll take it. So I got a couple gaskets for these right here. I'll probably put a little sealer on these, and I got our cover here, which this is a little different. It's got this plate that sticks out here, okay? And I mean, if you weren't paying attention, let's see, theoretically you could put this on the wrong way, which I'm really surprised, because usually on something like this, they would have these holes offset or something so that you wouldn't be able to do that. And the only thing, the holes do line up. I can get the screw in there. The only thing I can show you is that this edge hangs over a little bit. And if I come back around this way, you can probably see a little bit more of the paint shows. Now, here's the drawback. If you were to put this on this way, this is a port right here. This is where the fuel and oil and air come back through and then into your piston, into your combustion chamber. So this, okay, there's some junk in there. This has to go this way. I didn't even think about that when I pulled that apart, but I'm sure that's how it goes. Would not make sense to block it off, right? So we're gonna put that way. What else? So I'm gonna get those on there. You can probably see some of our adhesive or our sealer came out of there. And one thing I almost forgot about that I want to show you guys here is this here. So this nut right here. So I had this all sealed up. I slid this together. I forgot I was gonna have to start that nut on there. So I had to pull this back apart enough so I could get the nut in there, get it started, and then work it together from there. But one of the cool things is when I took this apart and I loosened all these nuts, I had them all loose, and this one, as I was loosening it, was separating the two halves of the block, so that made it kind of neat. And you'll see I got my water pump off. Actually, one of these bolts was bent, the other one was broke off in here. I had to heat it up to get it out of there. So thankfully I had some extra screws for this thing from a parts motor. So the next thing, I'm gonna put the import covers on, and I wanted to show you this over here, because normally a lot of these blocks, this is how it would be. So this one here is a 1960 Merc 150. And I wanted to give you guys, if you've never seen one apart, I wanted to give you an idea of this. So your crank would sit in here, okay? And then I'll flip this over. Here's your exhaust, okay? Your exhaust ports. And then this is another motor I gotta put together. And then I think I mentioned it in the part 1 video. This is what they call a blind hole. So here's your cylinder, okay? And then here's where your plug goes. The cover that goes on here is just a water jacket cover. So you got water that flows around through here. And I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. It's right down in here. There's two of them. Thought I saw it. I know, like I say, when it's on TV you can see it better. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you're looking through this camera. But I'm gonna show you the side here. So this one and this one here. The water flows through these, okay? And that water comes up. This is the water tube from your lower unit, comes in here. It goes over this way. This is gonna be, your telltale is gonna shoot out of here. And then the water also goes in through that hole. Let's see, right in here. And then in the cover that goes on here, the water can come up, flow through here to cool your cylinder, and this one. And in another video I was talking about how I've pulled the impeller out of some of these. It wasn't this particular one, but I had one where there was part of an impeller stuck right in here. Basically crud around it, almost basically blocking that hole. For all I know, if I remember right, that might not have even been flowing. So that cylinder probably had gotten hot on this other motor. And this is normally what you're dealing with right here. Top piston, bottom piston. Here's your, let's turn this way. And this is the crank. So basically when you're trying to put this together, let's see, this would go like this. And you're trying to drop it down in there. like so. It's a lot easier, I think, fooling around with it this way than it is that one I just did. But this one I have not touched. This needs to be cleaned up, taken apart. I'll put new bearings in it and all that. The only thing I did, this is the one I showed you in the part 1 video. I did hone this block, so that block's ready to go. But I just wanted to show you that so you had an idea what that looked like. It is not open like an Avenue Johnson where you can put in the pistons from this side, you know, and then you got an actual head gasket and a head, you know. It's just the way those are made. One thing you don't have to worry about is blowing a head gasket, I guess. So I'm gonna get back. I'll put the port covers on this block. I'm gonna get that ready to roll. I'll get those on there, and then I think, because a lot of this is cleaned up and stuff, should be able to set it right on the midsection. So let me set you guys back over here, and we'll put them port covers on. All right, guys, this is where we're at. I got the port covers back on. I've got our base gasket right here with some sealer on it. I did trim this part of the split case gasket, I guess you would call it. I did notch that back. Just took a little utility knife and cut it so that this gasket would fit in there flush. And for right now, I set the the ignition back on the crank temporarily for now to make it easier to get it onto our base. And I kind of moved this thing out of the way too, because this bolts to the block after, so I'm hoping that's going to be out of the way enough to slide this thing on there. So let's see here if I can set you guys like here. Will that work? That'll be a little better. I think you'll be able to see better there. I guess something like that. So I want to get this set on here before the sealer starts setting up. And I did clean up all the nuts that are on here. I go on to this. I got it in the bowl here, so I'm gonna leave that right here. And those are 7/16. And let's see, I'm gonna try to do this so I'm facing you guys, I guess, so you can see better. I set a couple old spark plugs in this thing too to keep anything from getting in there. So let's see. Well, that didn't go too bad. Let's see if I can get some of these started. And then I think we might put the fuel pump on here today too. Oh yeah, I wanted to say too. So I have part one recorded and I didn't post it yet. um, and of course here we're doing video in part two. Um, so I'm sure I'm hoping actually I'll get some suggestions on comments on how to get those rings in there and the pistons on this block. And of course, if you end up watching part two, you're gonna realize I got it together and that I actually videoed this before part one was ever posted. So, so I'll let you know that I wasn't avoiding or not trying any of, in case someone does suggest, a different way of doing it or some type of way of doing it. I don't want you guys thinking that, you didn't even listen or whatever. It was really just that I'd already did the part two video, especially because this is Tuesday, so later this week I'm going to be busy at work, and early next week, and I try to do like a video a week. So I'm trying to get it done while I got some time off here. I figured I'd get a couple of these done. But anyway, thanks for any suggestions. If you guys comment and give me some suggestions on how to do it, I'm open to anything. Different ways of doing things, I'm open to that for sure. And actually, there's a guy, Tim, that comments. He subscribed, he watches, I'm pretty sure he watches all the videos. He's commented on a few of them, quite a few of them actually. And one comment he made on the video where I was working on the ignition, I believe he commented on that one. And he had said how the motor looked like it had never been run hot, which I thought was a good point. I've never brought that up, and I probably should have brought that up when I did the impeller on that motor. And that was because the paint on the top, exhaust housing, all that is in really nice shape on that motor. So that's a good point. If you're looking at some old outboard, especially someone new, maybe getting into it, you go to some swap meet type thing or something. That's one of the things you want to look for. You can see this one here. If you would ask me, I'd say this thing's gotten pretty hot before, quite possibly. You can see the paint here, but there's nothing here. The top, there's a little paint missing on the top. It's not too bad, but I would dare say it's quite possible that this thing's been run hot. So, that's a good thing to watch for, because especially if you pull this plate, there's a plate behind this exhaust cover. A lot of times they get warped, they get pitted, and they're very hard to find. I don't know that this is the same one as like my Mark 28 or my Mark 10 or like that block I showed you, that Mark that 15 horse. I've got a couple. I found a couple, but they're hard to find. My 222 horse that I'm putting together, I got to use a new one on that. That was warped pretty bad, and it was also paper thin in some spots where it corroded. I don't think that motor was running salt water. It came out of New York State, like upstate New York. So, I mean, that doesn't mean it wasn't, but I don't think it was. And one of the other things I wanted to say too about that is, so I'm hoping in this video we're going to try to do a compression check on this. And the 15 horse, that one, the reason I'm rebuilding that one is that came out of Florida, and it had so you can run it year round out there, and I'd say it had a lot of hours on it, and it had about 70 pounds compression in each cylinder, so at least it was even, and then it did run, and it actually ran pretty good. But I just thought I'd freshen it up. And the motor that I'm running on there is off a 10 horse. I want to bring you guys over here for a second. So I had mentioned in when I did a video on introduction to some old outboards, I mentioned that these 10 horse and 15 horse motors were the same, and sometimes you'll find different carburetor numbers, but I've seen some motors where the carburetor numbers are the same, like a Mark 10 and a Mark 15A, which is a 15 horse. The Mark 10's a 10 horse, and they both ran the same carburetor. I mean, that's right in the book. So what I did find out from my part sheets and checking things out is that this would be like your center main bearing, I guess is what they call it, but this also has your reeds. You can see a reed plate there. This has got, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. 1, 2, yeah, 4 on the top, 4 on the bottom. I don't have a 10 horse apart, so I'd like to take, next time I take one apart, I'd be curious to see what's different. This cage, according to my book, for like a let's see, the 15 horse and the 22 horse is the same cage, is my understanding. The 10 horse is different. Obviously the bore is bigger on the 22 horse versus this 15. The 15 and the 10 is basically everything's the same pistons, as I recall. This is all the same, but it's the reed cage that's different. So a 10 horse block, you know, if you saw a 10 horse 1960 Merc 100 10 horse for sale, it is different than the 15, and the only real difference would be this cage. So I just thought I'd point that out, because in that video I said that I thought they were the same, just change the carburetor. But so I'm gonna finish putting this the block on. I get the 2 front screws I'm gonna have to play with a little bit, get those going, so I'm gonna get those on there, get that tightened down, and then we're gonna attack the fuel pump, and then I'm gonna get my compression tester out. I'm gonna get the flywheel out, and for the heck of it, let's see what we got for compression. So be right back. All right, guys. So what I ended up doing was I used this little pair of pliers here to try to get that little son of a gun right there. To get that nut started, I just kind of lifted it up in there and was able to turn it a little bit, hold my finger under there and turn it. And I got it to I got it on there, so those are all tight, our blocks on there. I slid the ignition down for now, the stator plate, and I just set the flywheel on there with the pull start so that we can try a compression check here in a little bit. The fuel pump, so on the fuel pump, let's see here, it's this style here, and it's the same thing as on like the Mark 28 I've been working on, Mark 10, stuff like that. And a lot of times a lot of times I don't pull these out, these valves, you know, that sit down in here, and you really can't goof them up. You'll see there's a pin here, one goes one way, one goes the other. So obviously, like this one here, you're not gonna be able to get that in there, which means it goes like this on this side. But this one, there's a couple reasons I don't mess with these, but this one looked kind of messed up. Matter of fact, where'd the other part of that thing go? Here it is. This was sitting in here, and it was kind of bent. Looked like it was bent. And see, it looks distorted somehow. I mean, I know it's not sitting in there right, but still, it looked distorted through here. And I used to change these things all the time on these older ones. This would be the kit for it. It's 21-30430A1. That's the crucial part, because your rectangular type pumps on the newer Mercs, like I think my 71 10 horse, or well, 7.5 horse had it. I know the 71 or 70 20 horse I had has the rectangular one. It's a different setup than this. And I think some of your small Mercs from the early 70s eventually went over to this rectangle. They had a rectangle pump on them, but the valves weren't like these. They're really, really small. I've never even seen the kit, and they actually go in on the end. The rectangular ones that have these in there, which, like I said, I'm not sure what year they switched over. It's this, I don't want to say it's the same part number, but I wish I had actually, I did have another one here. It's in my inventory, but it's basically the same number, except for instead of a 1, this is a 2. Totally different kit. It's not this style pump. Now, so this one just, I stole the kit out of this except for the valves, so I'm gonna dig the valves out of here in a second. But one of the reasons I don't take these apart unless I think there's a problem is these screws are very small, very fragile, and I've had them break. And what's really weird is the ones, it's probably just me, but the ones that you actually use a screwdriver to get these off, I've had bad luck with them. I've had the head snap right off, and I don't even know if it's worth dealing with it after that. I mean, you could try to drill it out, play with it, and I just end up going on eBay and finding a used pump for like 15 bucks, or at least you used to be able to. But in this case, this one valve was messed, didn't look right, and I decided I was going to change them. So this was the diaphragm that was in here. I'm sure you can hear that. I mean, this thing's stiffer than, this would not last. Matter of fact, I had a Mark 10 one time, and I don't know why. I think I had to order the fuel pump kit, and I wanted to run it, and it didn't look that bad. I was ripping it around the lake, and all of a sudden the motor started running like crap, and then by the time I got it, I barely made it back to the dock. It kept stalling, and I kept fooling around with it, getting it started, and I made it back, and then I couldn't get it to start again, and then the motor locked up, and I thought, wow, what happened? Well, what happened was this ripped. So the fuel was filling up one of the cylinders. So anyway, it's probably part of the reason I started stocking these kits. Now, here's the other kit. Okay, this is just basically a couple gaskets, which I don't usually use these because I don't pull the valves out, but they come in this particular kit. So you got your 2 gaskets, you got the diaphragm, and there's another cardboard type piece inside here, which I'm gonna guess it's like a maybe acts like a heat shield, like on some of the old Evinrudes, like a 1960, I think it was first year they went to a fuel pump on the motor. 59, they were still on the tank. So I have yet to pull one of these apart on the motors I have that you actually use that gasket. Matter of fact, I'll get that out in a minute. Except for on a friend of mine's Merc 1960 Merc 300 30 horse, which was a 4-cylinder, so I had 2 carbs, and that had it on it. It actually used that shield, so, or whatever the thing is. So we did put it on that. whether these old Mark 25s, Mark 10s, Merc 100, 200, 150, those, the two-cylinder, 10, 15, 22 horse like that. Whether they came from the factory with that shield thing on there, I do not know. I never put them on, and I've never had a problem. So I typically just get this kit. It's a couple bucks cheaper. I don't know that these little one-way valves go bad or not. Like I say, just that one looked messed up, so I changed it. So that's the number for just the gaskets without those valves. 230 14 A1. I don't know how much they are, 10, 12 bucks. This one here was made 9/29/17. Excuse me. So let me get those open, and I'll show you what they consist of there. I'll show you what I'm talking about with that gasket. Meanwhile, I'm going to set you right here for a second. Thing looks nice with the motor back on there. Let's see. Alright, here's our new valves. They are a little different than the original. Here's the original one. This one's got kind of like an X in there, but they are the same. Actually, did I actually on this one? To be honest with you, I didn't. Sometimes they don't list the kit though. They list the stuff separate. But anyway, they look the same to me. So that's that. So here's our two gaskets. These are the same. They do only go on one way. Let's see if I set this down. You'll probably be able to tell. This hole here is offset this way some. So both these gaskets are the same. This is the other one. This is our diaphragm. Okay. And then here's this gasket that comes in the kit. That the Merc 300 is the only one I've seen so far that I used one of these. It's pretty stiff. It's real stiff. It's like it's like a gasket you would use for something. Like the gasket I just put on for our base. It's some pretty hard material, but I've never had one with it on there on these little motors, so I don't use it. And this little bracket holds those little valves in there. There's this little piece here. And one of the things, I don't think I said it, I talked about how a regular screwdriver, I've had bad luck with those type of screws. The ones that are Phillips that would be in here, I swear those come off all the time. So I've had better luck with the Phillips head ones. It's still the same screw hole as far as I know. I think it's just my luck, but I just got lucky this one came apart. So I'm going to put these valves in here. And there's a little gasket that goes on there. This round little gasket that's going to set inside there. And then you can probably see that one there. And this is the one that the valve has to go with this facing out, not this. This will be on the other side. I'm going to set that in there like so. Okay. And then once we get the other one in, we'll have our piece I showed you that screws in there. We'll snug that up so that holds that in there good. And then we'll put it on the motor. Alright guys, we're back at it here. So I got our fuel pump together, and you'll notice I got the screws through there because you can actually put the screws through there. They fit on there. They kind of hold the gasket in place. You'll see we got our cork gasket, our diaphragm, and then the other cork gasket goes up against your pump. And so basically the diaphragm goes in between the two cork gaskets. So let me put this on there. Where did I put? Here it is. I might have a problem here. Let's see. So one of these screws was bent, one was black, one was broke. It broke taking it off. So I took 3 out of an old pump. I don't know, that goes in there a little tight. The threads look the same, but well, you know what? We're not going to put it on there then. I'm going to have to look into that and find out if these screws are different. I wouldn't think so. Either that or I'm going to have to run a tap in there. Boy, I wish I knew that. But, well, that's just how it goes sometimes. I don't know. I'll look into it. Find out what the deal is on that. Meanwhile, I went up and checked my mail, and I got my tool that I ordered. This top side here is going to be, and I think the original tools had 2 prongs. This has got 4. And this is for that water pump cover for the lower unit on here. So that'll put the water pump cover on. And then the top of this has got 4 prongs for doing the, if you got to get the gear case cover off on the lower unit, which might end up having to happen on this. It looked like it's kind of a little wet around there, and I got a bad feeling after I run this we're gonna possibly have to rebuild the lower unit. But I'm gonna run it first. I'll fill it with gear oil and we'll see what happens. The fuel pump's gonna wait. I've got this piece here for our compression checker. I got this, which is going to clamp on here. Like so. Just let that hang there. I got this rope. It actually came with this motor and another motor and a bunch of parts that came with this. So maybe I'll try it out on here. Let's see. Seems a little short, but. And the other thing you want to make sure, if you're checking a compression on something, you always want to make sure you got the throttle wide open. Which, yep, in this case, it's wide open. So, just so it'll let some air in there. So, it'd be nice if it had a pull start like a Johnson Avenue, but we're going to deal with this. So, I usually try to go around 4 pulls and see how this is going to work. Definitely sounds like it's got some compression. Yeah, come on. Yikes, what the heck? That's 2. Holy smokes. Okay, you know what? I'll leave it at 2 pulls for now, guys, because damn, I'm impressed and I am thrilled. That's at 100 with 2 pulls. Well, maybe 2.5. See what the top looks like. Let's hope it's about the same. Guys, that is just for only doing 4 rings. You know, half-ass freaking honing job. I couldn't be happier. Although I better shut up for a second until we do this one. But I'm real happy about that. Well, let's give this one a couple tugs and see what happens. This one doesn't seem to be as alright, I'll shut up again. You know what? Just for the heck of it. Right now it's at what would that be? It's over 100. Oh. Yeah, it's at 110. Let's give it another one just for the heck of it. This thing's gonna rock. Alright, let's see here. So we gave this one, we'll say, an extra pull. It was at 110. Just shy of 120. Unbelievable. Well, it is about 120. I'm impressed. That's awesome. Yep, that is awesome. I couldn't be any happier. Well, unless the fuel pump went on. I'll have to figure that out. So, I miss Sears being around. These are all craftsman tools I've collected over the years. This compression tester came from Sears. Nice little tester. I don't remember what I paid for it, but I guess there are some places that are selling craftsman tools, but still. And then one other thing I might want to point out here that we should probably keep in mind is that there is some oil in these cylinders. Because I wiped the cylinders down, and when I got it together and the side ports were off, I did drop some 2-stroke oil in there just for some extra lubrication. So I'm, it's probably helping a little bit, but geez, maybe we would have saw 150 if I wasn't cheap and I bought 2 more rings. But what can you say? And then we got if anybody watched the rebuild for the carburetor on this motor, I did find the bolt. So I knew I didn't lose it. I still got to make my lines for this, and I've got right here, I've got the old gasket. I'm not necessarily going to put this on right now, but I'm just curious. Yeah. Actually, they look very similar. It almost looks like this. I thought it was a circle, but it does have a little bit of a weird design to it like this one. So it looks like this will be the gasket we need. And then one of the things I'm concerned with is I use these connectors. So when I do put this on our fuel pump, this had an elbow on it. Now this is going to be something like this. And our cover goes on here. I got to pay attention to where this is going to come up, and I think it goes forward, so maybe it won't be an issue. If it is, I'll figure something out. I can always cut these down too. I've done that before, where I'll take a couple of these off. I'll cut them right here with my fingernail, make it shorter if that's what I gotta do. But right now I just gotta figure out those darn screw holes. I don't know, carburetor's gonna end up here, which, so yeah, it's starting to look like something. All right, anyways, that's we're getting close. I still got to go through the ignition on this. I never did check it for spark. I don't think I did on this one, so I'll have to check it for spark, and then I'll go through this anyways. This still has to be clamped on. This got a funky, it's not like the one I did the other video I did with the ignition. Coils, points, condenser, that stuff's the same, but this plate attaches differently, so I'm gonna have to check that out, go through that, get that anchored down, make sure we got spark. I'm probably gonna clean up this flywheel and paint it probably gray. I'm gonna see what they look if I can find. I'm sure there's plenty of videos of these motors. Find one with the cover off, see what theirs was. The inside of it's gray. A lot of the ones I deal with is the flywheel's red. But yeah, I'll probably clean it up, paint it. The lower unit, now that I got that tool, I have all the parts to put the lower unit together, so I'm going to do a video on that with our new impeller, the new cover, A couple other little odds and ends that go along with that, and we'll get that on there. Our ignition button up this here with our fuel lines and whatnot, and we'll have this one ready to run. The Mark 28 AD is ready to run, other than I got to paint the prop, which I'll probably do tomorrow. We haven't run the Mark 10 yet. That's going to be another one. We might try to run it tonight. The guy next door told me the lake was closed because they treated it, but there's been boats out here on and off all day, and you probably just heard the 2 jet skis. So, yeah. I'll see what time my kid gets home from work, and if he feels like lugging that motor down with me, and we'll, I'd like to get that video out, the Mark 10, because I gotta adjust the carburetor on that. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully this will help somebody out. It can show you that just on a backyard mechanic like myself with a cheap hone from a local hardware store, and a little bit of honing oil and a lot of patience, and you can do this yourself. And as it turns out, we got some great compression, and hopefully those needle bearings took care of the problem. It's gonna be a nice little runner. So we'll see you on the next video, and take care, everybody.